Start.
Hi, I'm Anna Aratia, and this is my speech on hemp, MJ, and the Founding Fathers, and this is my audience.
Hello.
Hi. Hemp is often confused with the marijuana plant. Both come from the plant family Cannabis sativa, but from very different varieties. The fiber-bearing plant has been bred for thousands of years for its long, fine fibers. The fiber plant has no drug value, and the drug plant has no fiber value. Here's a picture over here of some industrial hemp fields. It's different than the regular marijuana plant. Hemp played a key role in the early days of the United States. As far as any record shows, we have pretty much depended on hemp, at least for the way greater portion of our history. But the plant that produces not only fiber for clothing and materials, but seeds for food and such, there has been no reason not to cultivate it. As far as the history of hemp in America, hemp was planted from day one, as it seems. Arriving with the Puritans in colonial America, hemp was planted almost immediately to supply materials such as lines, sails, and other things for the Mayflower. At that time, all sea vessels carried some stock of hemp seed. Being the fiber of choice, it was quickly spread throughout the colonies. The first American law concerning marijuana was written in Jamestown in 1619. Mandating the growth of Indian hemp, some colonies even enforced jail sentences for those who did not participate in what was quickly becoming a patriotic act. By 1730, most of the colonies had similar laws, and by the time of the Revolutionary War, its cultivation was considered the patriotic duty of the American farmers. Cannabis hemp quickly became legal tender in most of the early settler days of 1631 into the early 1800s, and taxes were paid with hemp for over 200 years. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Ben Franklin, virtually all revolutionary Americans who had access to land embraced hemp's critical role in our early economy. Accordingly, they raised it in mass quantities. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Ben Franklin not only spoke great things of the plant, but actually took part in the creation of the hemp industry. George Washington and Thomas Jefferson farmed hemp for its oils, fiber, and its many medicinal uses. So Thomas Jefferson received the U.S. first patent, a hemp threshing machine. He also smuggled new strains of the cannabis seed from China to France, then to America, and while serving as ambassador to France. He voices his opinion in the Farm Journal of March 16, 1791, stating that tobacco required much more manure, employed less people, and did not contribute to the wealth or defense of the state. Ben Franklin owned one of the first paper mills that processed hemp into parchment, that of which was used in many first drafts that later became the documents that Americans stand by today. That one being one of these. These two, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, they were all written on, their first drafts were written on hemp paper, as well as the Federalist, Anti-Federalist papers, and the Articles of Confederation, and Thomas Paine's pamphlet, Common Sense. They were all published around the year 1776 and all written on hemp paper. George Washington not only grew hemp for clothes that he homespun himself, he actually has a quote from his diary from August 7, 1765, began to separate the male from the female hemp at due rather too late, a technique that is used today now for distinguishing the potency of the plant, to see which one has more THC. Thomas Paine in 1776 encouraged colonists to fight for freedom with common sense. He writes, in almost every article of defense we abound, hemp flourishes even to rankness, so that we need not want cordage. He insisted America could win a war with the British king because hemp flourishes here. So the question is, did they smoke what they grew, or did they just grow it for its uses, for paper and that such? American Historical Reference Society and a consultant for the Smithsonian Institute counted 7 early presidents as cannabis smokers: George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe, Andrew Jackson, Zachary Taylor, and Franklin Pierce. For thousands of years before Americans were growing hemp, Asians were smoking it. After all, Thomas Jefferson smuggled seeds from Asia, which he believed to be the origin of cannabis. It's hard to say, but if Jefferson was aware of the hemp culture in Asia, one would think he would have seen the delight in smoking it as well, and thus provoked him to bring the Asian strains of cannabis to America. Okay, here are some quotes and some other facts that I put together about hemp. Okay, as you can see, a couple of our founding fathers in their hemp fields. George Washington, he said, "Make the most you can of the Indian hemp seed and sow it everywhere." That was something that he had wrote to the gardener at his Mount Vernon estate. Thomas Jefferson, "Hemp is of first necessity to the wealth and protection of the country. An acre of the best ground of hemp is to be selected and sown in hemp and be kept for a permanent hemp patch." If you read that and understand what he means by that. "Some of my finest hours have been spent on my back veranda smoking hemp and observing as far as my eye can see." So as you can see, it seems to be that they did smoke as well. Abraham Lincoln, "Two of my favorite things are sitting on my front porch, smoking a pipe of sweet hemp and playing my harmonica." That was said that he wrote that letter to the maker of the harmonica. I guess just letting him know that he liked to smoke and play music. This was a quote that he wrote about hemp. "Prohibition goes beyond the bound of reason in that it attempts to control a man's appetite by legislation and makes a crime out of things that are not crimes. A prohibition law strikes a blow at the very principles upon which our government was founded," because it was actually founded around the plant. "We shall by and by want a world of hemp more for our own consumption." John Adams. Sounded like he wanted it all for himself. Here are some history facts, in which a lot of these facts came out of the Encyclopedia Britannica, which was printed on hemp paper for 150 years. Since the 50s, it's been illegal. The first crop in many states that was grown was hemp. In 1850, they were producing 40,000 tons in Kentucky. It was one of the biggest cash crops until the 20th century. It's been grown for at least 12,000 years, for as far as we know, for fibers, paper, food. 80% of all textiles, fabrics, clothing, linen, drapes in the 1820s were all made from hemp. When the U.S. sources talk about Manila hemp, which was not the true hemp, it was cut off by the Japanese in World War II. The U.S. Army and U.S. Department of Agriculture promoted the Hemp for Victory campaign to grow hemp in the U.S. And this was something that I really didn't even know. But the War of 1812 was fought because of hemp. It was really crazy, but that was one of the... It had several causes, and one was the United Kingdom was warring with France and wanted to keep the United States from trading hemp with France. So it caused a pretty big war back then. There was quite a few, 22,260 American and 1,600 British troops died. All school books were made from hemp until the 1880s. The famous paintings, Rembrandt's, Gainsborough's, and the Van Goghs were all painted on hemp linen. Napoleon wanted to cut off Moscow's export to England, which brings us the book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes, because if it wasn't made from hemp, he wouldn't wear it. So if they cut off the import of hemp, then he didn't have anything to wear. So thousands of years, 90% of all ships, sails, and ropes were made from hemp. The word canvas is Dutch for cannabis. That, came from the word cannabis. Let's see. Henry Ford built his first car, or the first car actually, was the Model T. It was constructed from hemp, the entire thing, and it even drove on hemp and not gas. The hemp plastic panels on the side, they said the strength was 10 times stronger than steel. I think we should make cars out of hemp. For our ecological system, it would help out if we grew hemp. It could be made into fine quality paper. It can be recycled more times than regular wood-based paper. It grows in all varieties. It grows well in a variety of climates and soil types. It's naturally resistant to most pests, so you don't really need any pesticides when you're growing it, so therefore it would be cheaper to grow. It can take the place of cotton, which is usually grown with massive amounts of chemicals that are harmful to people and the environment. 50% of all the world's pesticides are sprayed on cotton, and we wear that too, by the way. Hemp can displace wood fiber and save forest for watershed, wildlife habitat, recreation, and oxygen production. Carbon sequestration, reduces global warming, and other values. Hemp can yield 3 to 8 tons of fiber per acre. This is 4 times what an average forest can yield. And some of the health facts of hemp is, if one tried to ingest enough industrial hemp to get a buzz, it would be equivalent to taking 2 to 3 doses of a laxative. So I don't think you'd want to try to smoke it or anything like that. 81% hemp oil is the richest known source of polyunsaturated fatty acids. That's the good fats that we need that helps actually lower your cholesterol. The oil and seed can be made into lots of different tasty nutritional products. So after all that said, the history of hemp, a little bit about hemp today and the actual marijuana plant. Let's see. So, although our federal government refuses to waver on hemp prohibition, they don't want to make it legal, public, state, and international support is growing. The European Union now subsidizes farmers to grow hemp, which is legally recognized as a commercial crop by the United States. The United Nations Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs. In recent years, a number of U.S. states have commissioned studies recommending hemp as a viable economic crop. Most recently, legislatures in Montana and North Dakota have enacted legislation licensing farmers to grow hemp. Through federal approval still remains necessary. Today, marijuana is the largest cash crop in many states and recognizes of the in regions of the United States. $1 billion worth of it was purchased under medical auspices last year in California alone. Property tax, it's used freed from our overcrowded prisons. Pot's legalization could offer a giant step out of our financial crisis. But as an agricultural staple, marijuana pales alongside hemp. This miracle weed returns on its own year after year, requiring no pesticides, herbicides, or special fertilizers. It is a hardy, fast-growing, and supremely productive plant. So honor our fathers, be a patriot, save our planet, stimulate our economy, and legalize hemp. And right there, hemp is nature's answer.